I'd like to speak about my father. He was born in 1916, 100 years ago. Born at the home, as most were back then, and probably will be after the Great Depression coming. Be that as it may, the doctor showed up a few days later, as the doctors back then would go around and check on the different homesteads and farms. And they gave him 24 eggs for coming by just to check, as very little money was ever exchanged. And my father talked about one of his earliest recollections. He said he thought he was about 5 years old, give or take. And he said there was a massive increase of jackrabbits. Now, if you know anything about jackrabbits, you know God has a sense of humor, because that is a funny looking rabbit. Be that as it may, there was a massive number of them, so many that they were damaging the crops. Literally, thousands upon thousands of jackrabbits in the immediate area. And so they got together, 100 people plus, and they herded those jackrabbits into pens that they had built up. And then they gave kids sticks to go in there and beat to death those rabbits. Oh, I know PETA would go nuts, and a lot of animal rights or just simply child protection would go nuts nowadays. But that's what they did. They gave the kids the sticks, they went in there and they beat those rabbits to death. Then the adults skinned them out, and they took the meat and got it down to the railroad and put them in ice cars and shipped that meat back east to the cities. They took the fur and tanned that out, and they sold the hides as well, trying to offset a little bit of all the damage those rabbits did to their crops. That's what they did when my father was small. Another event he talked about is getting close to teenagehood. He said they had a bad winter coming, and so what they did is they didn't have enough money to buy coal. They had $5 bill, that was it. And so they took the $5 and went down over by Palisade on the Frenchman River, and they bought a tree, a great big cottonwood tree, for $5. Standing cottonwood tree. Well, with axe and saw, they cut the tree down and into pieces small enough to move on wagon and horse, and they drove and took that 10 miles over to their house. 10 miles. And that was up some steep canyons and tabletop, from bottom to tabletop type thing. A lot of work. Dad said you can't imagine how tough that was. Not counting when they got the tree cut down, they dug out the stump and they took that too for that $5 bill. He said he never worked much harder in his life than he did then, that he could remember, in physical, just continuous labor. But they stayed warm that winter. He also talked about as a boy seeing the last of the wolves killed. Yep. He said they tried to shoot the wolves and kill them out that way with guns and poison, and nothing worked until they started digging out the pups. And that's how they wiped out the wolves in southwest Nebraska. And he said it was a blessing, because he said they were a true menace to the area. And now they're coming back and are seen every once in a while in southwest Nebraska again, sadly. At 14 years old, he quit school and he went to work for $1 a day, working as a field hand. Got to stay in the bunkhouse, and that's how he made a living, if you will, $6 a week. Once or twice a month, he'd go to Juanita and go to the picture show. And but he saved his money for the most part and built up enough that he was able to buy some machinery, and he started sharecropping on his own. He did that until he was 27 years old, and then the war came, and World War II, and he was drafted, one of the first drafted. And the 5,000 men that he went through basic training with, they only got 3 weeks basic training, and somebody with brass on the shoulders came in and said, "We can't wait. Ship this 5,000 on the rails up to New York City and out on a gray ghost ship," zigzagging every 7 minutes, praying that a German sub didn't get them. They was all by themselves. If they'd have got hit, they'd have all been dead. He told he was one of the few people that didn't get seasick, too. He saw combat in Africa, Sicily, and Italy. Some very bad stories he had. Be that as it may, if you knew nothing else about him, though, he and My mother couldn't have children. They had miscarriage after miscarriage. And so they tried to adopt, and that failed at first. But then they were called back to the orphanage and said, we have a boy here now that nobody wants. Almost 4 years old and he can't even walk. Rashes all over his body, and he's been abused from day one. Would you like to try it? And if you want to, just take him home. Just try it. Anytime, day or night, we'll come get him. No questions asked. So they took a chance on that boy. And if you knew nothing else, that would be enough about the kind of people they were. And that boy, yeah, is me. Robert Donze. If he lived, he'd be 100 years old. He only lived to be 76, but he did more in that 76 than a lot of these people that see 100. And to give you a final example, you see rich men have their funerals filled with all kinds of people. Poor people, though, you very seldom see that way of happening. But I'm here to tell you, it was overfilled on his day because he had done a lot for a lot of people. A giving man, a hard-working man, a quiet man, and many said, built like a brick outhouse, but as calm and tame as a lamb. And I inherited a little bit of that from his mindset. Robert Donze. Happy birthday.